The deep discovery Jasper Stone adjusted his diving mask one final time before plunging into the dark Pacific waters. The research station floated above him like a lonely lighthouse, its lights barely visible through the morning mist. At 28, he had spent more time underwater than most people spent in their cars, but today felt different. The ocean currents had been acting strangely for weeks, and Professor Bennett insisted they investigate. The descent took longer than usual. Jasper checked his depth gauge as he passed the 200-foot mark. His breathing apparatus hummed quietly, the only sound in the vast underwater silence. Schools of silver fish parted around him like liquid mercury, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him from the depths below. At 300 feet, his sonar device began beeping rapidly. Jasper frowned and checked the readings. There was definitely something large down there, something that shouldn't exist in these waters. He activated his underwater flashlight and descended further, curiosity overriding caution. What he found defied everything he knew about marine biology. A sleek, metallic structure lay half buried in the ocean floor, its surface smooth and reflective like polished silver. It was roughly the size of a small submarine, but its design was unlike anything human technology could produce. Curved lines flowed seamlessly into geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light.
Jasper circled the object slowly,
His heart pounding against his ribs. This wasn't some experimental military vessel or crashed aircraft. The metal felt warm even through his diving gloves, and stranger still, it seemed to respond to his touch with subtle changes in its luminescent patterns. As he explored the structure's surface, his fingers found what appeared to be a seam. The moment he pressed against it, the entire section slid open with surprising smoothness,
revealing an interior filled with breathable atmosphere and soft amber lighting. Asked the sleeping beauty against every safety protocol he had ever learned.
Jasper entered the vessel. The air inside was warm and carried a faint scent like ocean mist mixed with something floral he couldn't identify. The interior was more spacious than it appeared from outside, with walls that curved organically and surfaces that seemed to be grown rather than built. In the center of the main chamber stood a transparent pod filled with some kind of clear, viscous fluid. And floating within that fluid was the most beautiful woman Jasper had ever seen. Her skin had a pale, silver-blue tint that made her appear almost luminescent. Long, white hair floated around her face like seaweed in a gentle current. She wore what looked like a form-fitting suit made of some material that shifted between silver and deep blue as the light caught it. Her features were delicate but perfectly symmetrical, with high cheekbones and lips that were just slightly fuller than those of any human woman. Jasper approached the pod slowly, his scientific mind racing even as his heart hammered with something that felt dangerously close to attraction. This was clearly not human, but she was undeniably feminine and beautiful in a way that transcended species. The pod's surface was covered with symbols that pulsed gently. Without thinking, Jasper placed his palm against the transparent wall. The moment his skin made contact, the symbols flared brighter, and the woman's eyes snapped open. They were the most striking feature of all, large, almond-shaped, and colored like deep ocean water with flecks of silver that seemed to move like living stars. She looked directly at him through the fluid, and he could swear he saw recognition. In those impossible eyes, the pod began to drain, and within moments, she was stepping out onto the vessel's floor with fluid grace. Water ran off her suit without leaving any trace, and she moved like someone accustomed to different gravity or atmospheric pressure. "Thank you," she said, and Jasper nearly fell backward in shock. Not only was she speaking perfect English, but her voice was like music, melodic and warm with just a hint of an accent he couldn't place. She stood before him, completely composed, despite having just emerged from what appeared to be some kind of suspended animation. "You can understand me," Jasper said, his voice muffled by his diving equipment. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those mesmerizing eyes. "Your language was one of the first we learned. Are you Jasper Stone of the Pacific Research Station?" Now he definitely stepped backward. "How do you know my name? We've been observing your work. Your research into ocean currents and marine ecosystems shows a deep understanding of natural harmony. That is why you were chosen." "Chosen for what?" Instead of answering immediately, she gestured around the vessel's interior. My ship's life. Support systems failed during atmospheric entry. I have been in emergency stasis for 72 of your hours. Without your intervention, I would have died. The surface Jasper's training as a scientist warred with every instinct screaming at him that this situation was beyond dangerous. But looking at her, this impossible woman who spoke his name like she had known him for years, he found himself saying, "Need to get you to the surface. You'll need medical attention." "I do not require medical attention as you understand it," she replied. "But I would appreciate returning to the surface with you. There is much I need to explain." The ascent was surreal. She'd somehow produced a breathing apparatus that looked nothing like his scuba gear, but seemed to work perfectly. She moved through the water with an ease that made his years of diving experience look clumsy by comparison, gliding beside him like she was born for the ocean depths. When they broke the surface near the research station, Professor Bennett was waiting on the dock with obvious concern written across his weathered face. "Jasper, you've been down there for over 2 hours. We were about to send a rescue team." His words died in his throat as he saw Jasper's companion. "Professor Bennett," Jasper said, pulling himself onto the dock, "I'd like you to meet." "I'm sorry I never got your name." "I am called Nyx," she said, lifting herself from the water with impossible grace. The professor's jaw dropped as he took in her unusual appearance and the strange form-fitting suit that seemed to dry itself instantly. "Jasper," Professor Bennett said slowly, "what exactly have you brought to my research station?" The question hours later, after Nyx had answered dozens of questions with patient politeness and demonstrated several impossible abilities, including some kind of universal translation device and what appeared to be limited telepathic communication. With sea life, Jasper found himself alone with her in the station's small common area. She had been studying human behavioral patterns, she explained, particularly focusing on emotional bonds and intimate relationships. Her people had lost the ability to form deep emotional connections generations ago. Their civilization was slowly dying as a result. They needed to understand how humans maintained such strong emotional ties despite their relatively short lifespans. "Your species is remarkable," Nyx said, sitting across from him at the small table. "You form bonds that transcend logic, survival instinct, even self-preservation. We have observed human couples who will sacrifice everything for each other. Parents who will die for their children, friends who risk their lives for companions. This is what we must learn, and that's why you're here. To study human relationships? To study, yes, also to experience." Her silver-flecked eyes met his. "I've read thousands of your texts about love, analyzed countless hours of recorded human interactions, but understanding and experiencing are different things." As evening settled over the research station, Nyx made a request that left Jasper speechless. "I would like to share your sleeping quarters tonight," she said with the same calm directness she had used to discuss ocean currents earlier. Jasper nearly choked on his coffee. "I'm sorry, what?" "In my observations, humans who form strong emotional bonds often share sleeping space, even when they are not engaged in reproductive activities. I believe this proximity serves some kind of bonding function that my people have forgotten." "Nyx, I can't. That is, we can't." Jasper struggled to find words that wouldn't sound insulting. "It's not that simple. Humans don't just share beds with anyone. There's usually a romantic relationship involved. Emotional attachment, trust, ... But how does one develop trust without proximity?" she asked, and there was something in her voice that made him look at her more carefully. "How does one form emotional attachment without shared vulnerability?" "You don't understand," Jasper said, standing and pacing to the window. "What you're asking, it's not just about sleeping in the same space. For humans, sharing a bed implies intimacy, physical attraction, romantic feelings. Do you not find me attractive?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He turned to face her, and for the first time since meeting her, he saw something other than calm curiosity in her expression. There was uncertainty there, maybe even hurt.
No.
"Not the point," he said weakly. "Then what is the point, Jasper Stone?" Nyx stood and walked toward him, her movements graceful and deliberate. "You refuse to allow me close to you, Yet your physiological responses indicate attraction. Your breathing changes when I am near. Your pupils dilate when you look at me. Your body temperature increases during our conversations. If you find me attractive, and if trust requires proximity, why do you refuse? Jasper found himself backed against the window, his heart racing as she stopped just inches away from him. Her unusual scent, that combination of ocean mist and flowers, made his head spin. Because, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, what if this isn't real? What if these feelings aren't genuine? You're not human, Nix. You're from another world, another species. How do I know that what I'm feeling isn't some kind of biological manipulation? How do I know you're not just studying me like a lab rat? For a long moment, she simply looked at him, those incredible eyes searching his face. Then she asked the question that would haunt him for the rest of the night. If I were human, would you have said yes? Before he could answer, she stepped back, gave him a small, sad smile, and walked toward the door. I will sleep in the guest quarters tonight, she said. But Jasper, consider this. If you cannot trust someone enough to share their presence, in sleep, how can you ever truly know them? And if you never truly know them, how can you ever truly love them? She paused at the doorway. My people are dying because we forgot how to be vulnerable with each other, forgot that love requires risk. Perhaps your species' greatest strength is not your intelligence or your adaptability, but your willingness to open your hearts despite the possibility of pain. Then she was gone, leaving Jasper alone with the echo of her words and a question. That would keep him awake all night. What if she was right? Outside the window, stars reflected on the dark ocean surface, and Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere among those distant lights, an entire civilization was waiting to learn whether love was worth the risk of heartbreak. He had, until morning, to decide if he was brave enough to teach them. Jasper hadn't slept. He stood on the research station's observation deck, watching the sun rise over the Pacific while nursing his third cup of coffee. Nix's question echoed in his mind like a song he couldn't forget. The logical part of his brain insisted he had made the right choice, but his heart felt like it was being slowly torn apart. The sound of bare feet on metal made him turn. Nix approached slowly, her silver blue skin almost glowing in the morning light. She had changed from her form-fitting suit into clothes from the station's emergency supplies. But somehow even simple jeans and a white t-shirt looked elegant on her. You did not sleep, she observed, stopping beside him at the railing. Neither did you, apparently. My people require less rest than humans. She paused, studying his face. But that is not why I remained awake. I was thinking about your question, my question. You asked how you could know if your feelings were genuine, if I might be manipulating you somehow. She turned to face the ocean. It is a fair concern. My people do possess certain abilities that could influence human emotions. Jasper's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. Are you saying you have been manipulating me? No, she said firmly. But I could have. The fact that I chose not to should tell you something about my intentions. Before Jasper could respond, the communication radio in the station crackled to life. Professor Bennett's voice carried a note of urgency that made both of them freeze. Nix, you need to get to the communications room immediately. We have a problem. Unwelcome visitors, the communications room was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Professor Bennett stood hunched over multiple monitors, his face pale with concern. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed several dark shapes moving beneath the ocean's surface, approaching their location from different directions. What am I looking at? Jasper asked. Submarines, Professor Bennett replied grimly. Military.
Oh.
They've been converging on our position since dawn. And there's more. He switched to another screen showing aerial footage. 3 helicopters inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Nick stepped closer to the monitors, her expression unreadable. They detected my ship. It's not all they detected, eh? New voice said from the doorway. A tall woman in a crisp business suit entered the room, flanked by 2 men in military gear. She was perhaps 45, with steel-gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Dr. Victoria Hayes, Department of Extraterrestrial Research. she said, showing a badge that made Professor Bennett step back involuntarily. And you must be our visitor from the stars. Nix didn't flinch under the woman's scrutiny. I am Nix, of the Celestial Collective. I assume you have many questions. Oh, we have questions, Dr. Hayes said with a cold smile. But first let me share some information that might interest all of you. In the past 72 hours, we've detected 17 similar vessels entering Earth's atmosphere. Yours wasn't alone, was it? Jasper felt the world shift beneath his feet. 17. My people are cautious, Nick said calmly. One observer would provide insufficient data. But I assure you, we mean no harm. Give me if I don't take the word of an alien invasion force, Dr. Hayes replied. It's particularly one that's been lying to her human contact. I have not lied to Jasper, haven't you? Dr. Hayes pulled out a tablet and swiped through several screens. Our analysis of your vessel revealed communication logs. Transmissions to and from your ship that began long before you supposedly crashed. You've been in contact with your people this entire time. Jasper turned to stare at Nix, feeling betrayed. Is that true? For the first time since he'd met her, Nix looked genuinely uncomfortable. Yes, but not in the way she implies. Then explain it, Jasper said, his voice harder than he intended. Nix glanced around the room, her gaze lingering on the armed soldiers before settling back on Jasper. My people have been observing Earth for many generations, he established. Monitoring stations throughout your solar system decades ago. The ship you found was not crashed, it was hidden. Hidden for what purpose? Dr. Hayes demanded. To study human emotional bonds at close range. Specifically, to observe and experience romantic love. Nix's cheeks actually flushed slightly. People call it the great mystery. How humans can form such powerful emotional connections despite knowing they will eventually lose each other to age or death? Professor Bennett shook his head in amazement. You're anthropologists. In a sense, yes. But our interest is not academic. Our civilization is dying because we lost the ability to form deep emotional connections. We reproduce through artificial means. We cooperate out of logic rather than affection. And our population has been declining for thousands of years. We need to relearn what you call love, or our species will become extinct. Dr. Hayes stepped forward aggressively. And you thought you'd just come down here and play house with one of our citizens to solve your problem? I volunteered for this mission, Nix said, her voice gaining strength. Of all my people, I was the most capable of forming emotional attachments. I was chosen because preliminary observations indicated that Jasper Stone would be an ideal test. Subject. The words hit Jasper like a physical blow.
Test subject.
Nix turned to him, her eyes wide with what looked like panic. That is not how I meant it. When the mission began, yes, you were selected based on psychological profiles and behavioral analysis. But everything changed when I actually met you. How convenient, Dr. Hayes said. The alien falls in love with her research subject. How very human of you. It is human, Nix said quietly. That is the point. I've been changed by this experience. In ways my people did not expect. The emotions I feel for Jasper are not simulated or calculated. They are real, and they are transforming me. The deeper truth is if summoned by their conversation, the communication equipment suddenly activated on its own. The main screen flickered and then displayed a face that was unmistakably related to Nix, though older and more austere. The being had the same silver-blue skin and large eyes, but there was a coldness there that made Jasper shiver. Nix of the 7th house, the figure said in a voice that carried both authority and disappointment. You have failed to maintain proper observational protocols, Elder Quinn, Nix replied, straightening her shoulders. I was not expecting direct contact. Your emotional contamination has been detected. The mission parameters have been compromised. Elder Quinn's gaze shifted to encompass the humans in the room. We must discuss termination procedures. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. I'm Dr. Victoria Hayes, representing the government of Earth. We demand an explanation for this infiltration. Elder Quinn's expression didn't change. Your demands are irrelevant. This is an internal matter of the collective. The hell it is, Jasper said, surprising everyone, including himself. You're talking about Nyx like she's malfunctioned equipment. She's a person. Interesting, Elder Quinn mused. The subject has formed protective instincts. Nyx, your contamination appears to be mutual. It is not contamination, Nyx said firmly. It is evolution. What I have experienced with Jasper has shown me that our people's assumptions about emotional bonds were incorrect. Love is not a weakness or a distraction. It is a source of strength. You speak of matters beyond your understanding, Elder Quinn replied. The Council has reviewed your reports. The human capacity for emotional attachment is indeed powerful, but it also makes them unpredictable and potentially dangerous. We have decided that further study is unnecessary. What does that mean? Professor Bennett asked, though his tone suggested he didn't want to know the answer. It means, Dr. Hayes said grimly, that they're calling off their experiment. Question is, what happens to the subjects? Elder Quinn's image flickered slightly. The humans who have been exposed to our presence will need to be processed. Memory modification is the preferred method, though termination may be necessary in extreme cases. You're talking about mind control, Jasper said, stepping protectively closer to Nyx. We are talking about maintaining the security of both our species, Elder Quinn corrected. Nyx will return to the collective for rehabilitation, or emotional. Contamination can be corrected. No, Nyx said, her voice carrying a strength that surprised everyone. I refuse to return. The silence that followed was deafening. Elder Quinn's expression shifted from cold authority to something approaching shock. You refuse a direct order from the Council. I choose to remain with Jasper and continue learning about human emotional bonds. If love is contamination, then I choose to be contaminated. Elder Quinn's image leaned forward. Then you choose exile. You will be cut off from the collective, stripped of your technological support, left to live and die as the humans do. That is the price of love, Nyx said, reaching for Jasper's hand. Then I will pay it. Jasper felt her fingers intertwine with his, and in that moment, he understood what she had been trying to tell him the night before. Love required risk. It required vulnerability. It required the courage to choose another person over safety, comfort, even survival. Elder Quinn, he said, squeezing Nyx's hand. With respect, I think you're missing the point of your own experiment. Explain. You sent Nyx here to learn about human emotional bonds, and she did. She learned that love isn't just an emotion or a chemical reaction, it's a choice. Every day, humans choose to love each other despite knowing they'll eventually lose each other. We choose to be vulnerable, to open our hearts, to risk pain for the possibility of joy. He looked at Nyx, seeing his own feelings reflected in her. Extraordinary eyes, Nyx made that choice. She chose to love me, and I choose to love her. That's not contamination. That's the answer you've been looking for. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. This is all very touching, but we still have 17 alien vessels in our solar system, and a potential threat to human security. The threat, Elder Quinn said, comes from emotional instability. Humans who form these intense bonds become unpredictable. They will fight to protect those they love, even against overwhelming odds. Exactly, Jasper said. And that's what makes us strong, not weak. Nyx didn't just learn to love one person. She learned to care about all of humanity. Your people aren't dying because you lost the ability to love. You're dying because you lost the courage to be vulnerable. Elder Quinn was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. The Council will consider your words. But understand this. If we determine that humanity poses a threat, we have the capability to neutralize that threat permanently. The transmission ended, leaving the room in tense silence. Dr. Hayes turned to Nyx with a mixture of anger and concern. Well, congratulations. You've just put our entire species at risk because you fell in love with a marine biologist. Nyx said firmly. I've given both our species a chance to survive. The question is whether we're brave enough to take it. Outside, the sound of helicopters grew louder, and Jasper realized that their real test was just beginning. The siege, the research station, had become a fortress. Military vessels surrounded them on all sides. Their communications were being monitored, and armed soldiers patrolled the decks. Dr. Hayes had made it clear that Nix was now considered a potential weapon, and Jasper was viewed as either a victim of alien manipulation or a willing collaborator. Commander Torres, the military leader who had arrived with the second wave of helicopters, was a man who saw the world in terms of threats and assets. He paced the station's main laboratory like a caged predator, his cold eyes never leaving Nix as she sat calmly at the central table. "Let me understand this correctly," he said, his voice clipped with military precision. "You're telling me that 17 alien vessels have infiltrated our solar system, and their purpose is to study human emotions." "To learn from them," Nix corrected. "My people have lost the ability to form emotional bonds. Without that capability, we cannot reproduce, naturally cannot form families, cannot even properly cooperate as a species. We are slowly becoming extinct. Do you expect me to believe that beings advanced enough for interstellar travel need relationship counseling from humans?" Jasper stood up from his position near the window. "Commander, you're missing the bigger picture. If what Nix is saying is true, then we're not dealing with an invasion force. We're dealing with refugees. Refugees with superior technology and the ability to manipulate human minds," Dr. Hayes interjected. "That makes them dangerous regardless of their intentions." "I have not manipulated anyone," Nix said firmly. "I could have influenced Jasper's emotions from the moment we met, but I chose not to. Everything he feels, everything I feel, is genuine." Commander Torres stopped pacing and fixed Nix with an intense stare. "Prove it. How? Claim your people have this emotional manipulation ability. Use it on me. Show me how it works." "No," Nix said immediately. "Why not?" "If you're really committed to proving your peaceful intentions, demonstrate your capabilities." "Because," Nix said, her voice gaining intensity, "using that ability without consent would be a violation of everything I have learned about human relationships. It would be rape of the mind, and I will not do it." The room fell silent. "Commander." Torres studied Nix for a long moment, and Jasper thought he saw a flicker of something like respect in the military man's eyes. "That's exactly what someone who is manipulating us would say," Dr. Hayes pointed out. Before anyone could respond, the station's communication system activated again. This time, however, it wasn't Elder Quinn who appeared on the screen. It was a figure that made Nix gasp in recognition. The being on the screen was ancient, even by alien standards. Their skin had a translucent quality, and their eyes held depths that suggested they had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. When they spoke, their voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am High Elder Zeraphine of the Celestial Collective Council. I speak for all our people." Nix immediately stood and bowed deeply. "High Elder, I am honored by your presence. Of the seventh house, your actions have created a crisis that threatens both our species. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity." The Judgment High Elder Zeraphine's image dominated the main screen, their presence somehow making the room feel smaller and more charged with tension. Commander Torres had his hand on his sidearm, while Dr. Hayes furiously took notes on her tablet. "For 3 generations, we have observed your species from a distance," the High Elder began. "We have studied your wars, your violence, your capacity for cruelty. The evidence suggested that humans were too dangerous to approach directly." "But," Jasper prompted, sensing there was more. "But Nix's mission has provided new data. Reports describe acts of selflessness, compassion, and love that our preliminary observations failed to capture. More importantly, her own transformation suggests that the emotional bonds humans form may be learnable." Nix stepped forward. "High Elder, I request permission to continue my studies. I believe I can help our people rediscover what we have lost." "That option is no longer available," the High Elder replied gravely. "Your emotional attachment has been deemed a contamination by the Council. You must return for rehabilitation, or you will be permanently exiled from the collective." "Then I choose exile," Nix said, without hesitation. The declaration sent shockwaves through the room. Even High Elder Zeraphine seemed taken aback by the immediacy of her response. "You would abandon your entire civilization for one human?" "I would choose love over fear," Nix replied. "That is what humans have taught me." Sometimes the most important choices require the greatest sacrifices. Commander Torres stepped forward aggressively. And what about the rest of your people? 17 ships in our solar system? Are they just going to leave peacefully? High Elder Seraphine's expression hardened. The Council has determined that humanity poses too great a risk. Your species' emotional volatility makes you unpredictable. Your capacity for both love and violence in equal measure suggests that contact would be dangerous for both our peoples. You're just going to disappear? Professor Bennett asked. We are going to ensure that this contact never occurred, the High Elder said ominously. The humans who have been exposed to our presence will have their memories modified.
All evidence
Of our existence will be eliminated. Earth will be marked as off-limits for future contact. What about me? Nix asked quietly. You made your choice. You'll remain on Earth, cut off from all collective technology and support. You will age and die as humans do, experiencing the pain of loss that your new emotional bonds will inevitably bring. Jasper felt his heart breaking for Nix, but also burning with admiration for her courage. She was literally choosing to become mortal for love. High Elder, he said, stepping beside Nix and taking her hand. I think your council is making a mistake. Explain. You're so focused on the risks of emotional attachment that you're ignoring the benefits. Yes, humans can be violent and unpredictable. But we're also capable of incredible acts of heroism, self-sacrifice, and creativity precisely because we form these deep emotional bonds. He gestured around the room. Look at what's happening right here. Nix chose love over safety. I'm choosing to stand with her despite knowing it might put me in danger. Professor Bennett is risking his career to help us. Even Commander Torres and Dr. Hayes, who see Nix as a potential threat, are trying to protect humanity because they love their people. Love makes us stronger, not weaker, Nix added. It gives us something worth fighting for, something worth sacrificing for. Your people aren't dying because they lost the ability to love. They're dying because they're afraid to be vulnerable enough to love. High Elder Seraphine was quiet for a long moment. They spoke again. Their voice carried a note of uncertainty. The Council believes that emotional bonds lead to irrationality and conflict. Sometimes, Jasper admitted. But they also lead to art, music, literature, scientific discovery, and acts of incredible courage. Every human achievement worth celebrating came from someone who loved something enough to risk everything for it. The bonding Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her expression skeptical. This is all very philosophical, but it doesn't address the practical concerns. How do we know that increased contact between our species won't lead to conflict or exploitation? There is a way to ensure peaceful coexistence, Nix said slowly, as if the idea was just forming in her mind. A bonding ritual that would create a permanent link between our species. What kind of link? Commander Torres demanded. Emotional resonance, Nix explained. If a human and one of my people undergo the bonding ritual, we become emotionally connected. Each feels what the other feels. It makes deception or manipulation impossible. High Elder Seraphine leaned forward with interest. The ancient bonding rituals were abandoned centuries ago. They were considered too dangerous. Dangerous how? Jasper asked. Because once bonded, the two beings become partially dependent on each other for emotional stability, Nix explained. If one dies, the other experiences profound trauma. If one is in pain, the other suffers as well. It requires absolute trust and commitment. It sounds like marriage, Professor Bennett. Observed, it is deeper than marriage, Nix said. It is a merging of souls. Jasper felt his heart racing. You're suggesting that we undergo this ritual? I am suggesting that we volunteer to be the bridge between our peoples, Nix replied. If the bonding is successful, if we can demonstrate that humans and my people can coexist in harmony, it might convince the Council to reconsider their decision. And if it fails, Dr. Hayes asked. Then at least we will have tried, Nix said simply. High Elder Seraphine studied them both for a long moment. The ritual has not been performed in over 300 years. There is no guarantee of success. And once begun, it cannot be reversed. I understand the risks, Jasper said, looking into Nix's eyes and seeing his own determination reflected there. But I think this is what you came here to learn. Love isn't just about feeling good or being happy. It's about choosing to bind your fate to another person's, accepting their pain as your own, and trusting them with everything you are. Jasper, Nix whispered. Are you certain? Once we are bonded, we can never be separated. You will feel my emotions as strongly as your own. You will experience my memories, my thoughts, my dreams, and you'll experience mine, he replied. What partnership means, isn't it? Complete vulnerability, complete trust, complete unity. Commander Torres shook his head. This is insane. You're talking about permanently altering your brain chemistry based on alien technology we don't understand. Actually, Dr. Hayes said, consulting her tablet, the physiological readings we've been taking from both of them show they're already partially synchronized. Heart rate, brainwave patterns, even hormone levels are starting to match. She looked up with something approaching wonder. I think the bonding process has already begun naturally. The ritual might just be making it official. High Elder Seraphine's expression showed the first hint of emotion Jasper had seen from any of the alien. Leadership. If this is true, if natural bonding is possible, then perhaps our species' future is not as hopeless as we believed. There's only one way to find out, Nick said. She turned to face Jasper fully, taking both his hands in hers. Jasper Stone. Of Earth, will you bond with me? Not just for our peoples, but for us? Will you choose to share your life, your heart, your very soul with me? Looking into her impossible eyes, feeling the warmth of her touch, knowing that this choice would change everything about his existence, Jasper realized that he had already made his decision the moment he first saw her in that underwater pod. Yes, he said simply. I choose you. I choose us. I choose love. The transformation, the bonding ritual, was unlike anything Jasper could have imagined. Nix had produced a small, crystalline device from her belongings. Something she explained was a family heirloom that had been used for bonding ceremonies for generations. As she activated it, the crystal began to glow with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to resonate with their heartbeats. Place your hands on the crystal together, Nix instructed, and we must speak the words of bonding in my language. The translation is, I offer my soul to yours, my pain to yours, my joy to yours. We are no longer two but one. Professor Bennett, Dr. Hayes, Commander Torres watched in fascination as Jasper and Nix placed their hands on the glowing crystal. The moment their skin touched its surface, light began to flow between them. Like liquid silver, Jasper felt the change immediately. It started as warmth spreading up his arms, but quickly became something far more profound. Suddenly, he could feel Nix's emotions as clearly as his own. Her nervousness, her love, her hope, her fear, all became part of his emotional landscape. And he could tell that she was experiencing the same thing. Her eyes widened as she felt his determination, his protective instincts, his absolute commitment to her flooding through the connection. But it went deeper than emotions. Memories began to share between them. Jasper saw glimpses of Nix's childhood on a world of silver cities and crystalline gardens. He felt her loneliness as she grew up. In a society that valued logic over feeling, he experienced her wonder when she first learned about human love, and her desperate hope that she might someday feel such a connection herself. In return, Nix experienced his memories, his childhood by the ocean, his passion for marine biology, the loss of his parents in a car accident when he was 20, the years of loneliness that followed. She felt his immediate attraction to her when he first saw her in the pod, and his growing love over the past few days. The crystal's light grew brighter, and suddenly they were no longer just sharing memories and emotions. Their very consciousness began to merge. Jasper could think Nix's thoughts, speak her language, understand concepts that had been foreign to him moments before, and she was experiencing the same integration from his perspective. Incredible, Dr. Hayes whispered, watching the readings on her instruments. Their brain patterns are synchronizing perfectly. It's like they're becoming a single organism with two bodies. On the main screen, High Elder Seraphine watched with an expression of growing amazement. This should not be possible. Humans lack the neural pathways necessary for deep bonding. No, Nix said, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. Humans have different pathways, but they serve the same purpose. Love creates its own connections. Jasper felt the truth of her words resonate through their shared consciousness. The bonding wasn't changing them into something alien. It was revealing something that had always been possible for both their species. "The ritual is complete," Nyx announced, though Jasper knew it as surely as she did. They were bonded now, permanently and irrevocably connected. He could feel her presence in his mind like a warm, constant companion, and he knew she felt the same from him. High Elder Zeraphine leaned forward intently. "How do you feel? Are you still yourselves?" "We are ourselves," Jasper replied, "but we are also more than ourselves. I am still human, and Nyx is still of the collective, but we are also something new. And that something new," Nyx added, "proves that our species can coexist. We can learn from each other without losing what makes us unique." Commander Torres stepped forward. "This is all very touching, but what about the larger situation? What happens to the 17 ships? What happens to the human personnel who have been exposed?" High Elder Zeraphine was quiet for a long moment, studying the bonded pair. Finally, they spoke, and their voice carried a note of decision that hadn't been there before. "The success of this bonding changes everything. If humans and our people can achieve such perfect harmony, then perhaps the Council's fears were unfounded." They paused. "I am calling for an emergency session of the full Council. The bonding will be presented as evidence that peaceful coexistence is not only possible, but beneficial for both species." "And if the Council disagrees?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Then Nyx and Jasper will serve as living proof that love is stronger than fear," the High Elder replied. "But I believe, now that I have witnessed this miracle, that wisdom will prevail." New beginnings. 3 months later, Jasper stood on the deck of a new research vessel, watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson. The world had changed dramatically since that day at the research station. First contact had been officially established, with Nyx and Jasper serving as ambassadors between the species. Other humans had volunteered for bonding rituals, creating a growing community of human collective pairs who served as bridges between the two civilizations. Nyx emerged from the ship's laboratory, carrying a tablet showing the latest data from their joint research project. The collective's advanced technology, combined with human intuition and creativity, was producing scientific breakthroughs at an unprecedented rate. "The ocean restoration project is ahead of schedule," she reported, settling beside him at the rail. "The collective's environmental healing techniques are working even better than we hoped." Jasper felt her satisfaction through their bond, along with something else, something that made him turn to look at her more carefully. "There's something you're not telling me," he said, smiling at how easily he could read her emotions now. Nyx's eyes sparkled with mischief. "The medical team completed their analysis of the bonding process. They discovered something unexpected, which is, the bonding doesn't just create emotional connections," she said, taking his hand. "It also synchronizes biological systems, including reproductive compatibility." Jasper felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that Dr. Hayes was wrong about one thing. Love doesn't just save civilizations." Nyx smiled, placing her free hand on her still flat stomach. "Sometimes it creates new ones." As if summoned by their joy, a pod of dolphins surfaced nearby, their playful clicks and whistles seeming to celebrate the news. In the distance, one of the collective ships hung in the sky like a silver star, no longer a symbol of potential invasion, but of hope and partnership. Jasper pulled Nyx close, feeling her happiness amplify his own through their bond. Started as strangers from different worlds, brought together by curiosity and chance, they'd become lovers through choice and courage. Now they were becoming something even more precious, a family that would bridge the gap between species and prove that love truly was the most powerful force in the universe. "So," he said, kissing her temple, "what do we name the first human collective hybrid child in history?" Nyx laughed, the sound carrying through both their voices in perfect harmony. "We have 8 months to figure that out, but I was thinking, something that means bridge in both our languages?" "Perfect," Jasper agreed, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those points of light, two civilizations were learning to trust each other, to love each other, and to build a future together. And it had all started with a single question about sleeping beside the one you love. The answer they had discovered was always yes.